Welcome to the next episode, the next season, the new beginnings, 2022 or 2022 of PopCultX. Welcome. We're so glad you're here with us today, this week, this year, whenever you're watching this. We're happy that you're here, either watching us or listening to us, either via YouTube or a podcast. We're so glad that you're here and we're filling your screen or your ears. Once again, I am Daniel.
And Gabriel's here as well.
And yes, he is. So one quick thing I want to remind everyone, if you're not already doing this, make sure you subscribe to us, follow us, hit the little notification button. That way you always get notified of when we post new stuff, which, we post every Wednesday, usually. Might be a little different coming up, but just so you know, you get notified, you know when to go watch us, because, we know you're eager to hear and see from us. So
yeah.
How was your New Year, Gabe? How was your celebration?
New Year's Eve was great. I spent it in another country.
It sounded like yes, it was great.
and it was a lot of fun. Drank too much. Gen X cannot hang with the kids anymore. I had a super bad hangover. So that part wasn't fun, but I did get a chance to watch a couple movies and talk about them. So I'll be using those experiences today on the podcast to talk with everyone about those movies. But what about your New Year's Eve? How did it go?
It was nice and calm.
That's good.
The dogs got scared with the fireworks, so kind of comforted them. Yeah. But yeah, it was not too bad. We survived another year. But yeah, you're right. I think I saw the same two movies that you did.
Yeah.
So that would be a perfect place for us to start this next generation of podcast. Two movies that I want to talk about. One is Matrix Resurrections, and the other one is Don't Look Up. Yeah. Now, which one do you want to get into first?
I think Don't Look Up is going to be our first topic, and then we'll spend a little bit more time into the Matrix. So I think the Matrix means more, at least to me. I don't want to put words in your mouth, as a films, a sequence of films. Like I enjoyed them a lot, and so it meant a lot to me. So I think we'll spend a little bit more time on that. That sounds good. And then we'll get into Don't Look Up. So Don't Look Up, saw it. It's like one of the top films right now on Netflix. So you guys, any of our listeners haven't watched it, it is available to watch. It's a great cast. So that, number one, I think that the cast is amazing. Like, I have to give them props because Leonardo DiCaprio is in it, Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lawrence, Cate Blanchett, Timothy Chalamet, however you say his name, Ariana Grande's in it, Chris Evans. There's tons of
Jonah Hill,
Mark
Rylance,
Melanie Linsky, Kid Cudi,
Ron Perlman,
Rob Morgan. We could go on and on. So the cast is amazing. The point being that they have a really amazing cast. So the plot of the movie, for those who haven't seen it, is this PhD student played by Jennifer Lawrence is looking at stars and studying for her PhD, and she discovers that there's a comet hurling to Earth, and so she checks with her professor, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and they confirm, yes, it is coming, and so begins the movie. So it's basically them trying to warn the world that this huge comet is going to come, which would lead to basically the extinction of mankind and everything on the planet. It would just destroy Earth. And so the fun, I guess, is them trying to convince the president to do something, the news media. It's really a metaphor for like modern day society and how we don't take the environment seriously. It's kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio's like exhausted with trying to explain how important the environment is and how people have just kind of ignored it. It's like, okay, what would it take? Even if a comet was hurtling towards us, would you care about the environment? Would you do anything to help? And so it's a lot of that. It's a lot of making fun of, a president that's more concerned about her constituents and trying to win the new election, who was excellently played by Meryl Streep. She's sort of like a play on a Trump-like persona, who is, pretends to be like a shoot straight from the hip, kind of tough talking, popular with conservatives kind of a person. And her son's played by Jonah Hill, who's sort of, they're making fun of like the Trump kids being in the administration with his mom being the president, and he's a buffoon. That part I really loved. I thought it was hilarious. I really loved the characters that they were playing because it's basically making fun of the Trump family and the nepotism and the ignorance when it's like, okay, do you want to make sure that we protect the earth and not kill everyone, or are you more important? Do you care more about your popularity and getting votes? So that's my first point, is that the cast is amazing. They did a great job acting. Jennifer Lawrence, I really liked her. She's sort of playing like a alternative, like punk kind of a girl. Like they make fun of her, like the girl with the dragon tattoo kind of a vibe. She has like nose piercings and like bangs and like red hair, and everyone's like making fun of her hair in the whole movie. I really liked it. I thought they did a great job acting. Cate Blanchett is almost unrecognizable. She like transforms into this like vapid American with like big white teeth, that's always bubbly and positive newscaster. So let's stay with that. Is like, what did you think of the cast? What were your thoughts about the cast?
Oh, the cast was great. I mean, I particularly liked Mark Rylance, who played the CEO of Bash, which is kind of like a mimic of like Apple, that type of corporation. So, and I liked his character portrayal of it, and it reminded me of his portrayal in the movie Ready Player One when he played the main, I guess, developer of the whole Ready Player One universe. And I could see how he brought that persona into this character. And I thought it was really cool. I mean, I really liked Leonardo DiCaprio's portrayal of a scientist who becomes a celebrity, who goes back to becoming a family man. Yeah. And he gets that whole arc. He's, worried about the world. Then he's also worried about it, but he has his newfound success and the celebrity, and he lets it get a little bit to his head, and it takes him on a different journey. But then at the end, he realizes, oh, wait, that's not who I am. And he comes back to what he truly is, which is his family man and a father and a husband. And that whole, how would I say it? How he goes from one of the end of the spectrum to the other, and he just encompasses all that, all in the midst of trying not to go crazy and pull his hair out because no one is listening to the science, which is kind of like nowadays. And I think Adam McKay, the writer, did a great job. I mean, first off, trying to bring in everything that you mentioned about with the whole Trumpism and Republicans and conservatives and put them in a light where we could see just how foolish they are, and just, kind of have it be a caricature of that, but also balance in the seriousness of what could be a, earth-shattering circumstance. So I think he did a really good job of writing, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't when I picture Adam McKay, I picture like The Other Guys or Step Brothers. It's gonna be like an over the top comedy. Yeah. So when he brought this and it was a little more serious undertones, I think it was really good. I enjoyed that part of it as well. I don't know if you want to talk about the writing, but that's
I agree with you. I think that he did, it was a serious topic that I think that they were trying to create dialogue or send a message out in regards to like the environment and the importance of, us protecting Earth. However, I think that the humor didn't go far enough. The satire didn't go far enough. Okay. And then the seriousness didn't go far enough. So like, I think that for me, it was like kind of in the middle where it was like some parts funny, sometimes like serious. I would have liked it to have been like even more over the top with the satire.
Yeah, I hear you.
Or slightly more serious, because I think that there were certain aspects of it that it just didn't go far enough either way for me, but I did like it. I mean, I think that the message is kind of important. The whole "don't look up" is in reference to how even a comet coming down to the Earth would get politicized, and like, it's like COVID. It's like, how is a freaking virus politicized? And they show people saying like, oh, people just want to make you look up at the comet because they want to take away your guns, or like just the stupid things that people do.
Yeah.
And that's her, like Meryl Streep's president is her tagline is like, don't look up. Like, don't even pay attention to the comment because that's what they want you to do. Those liberals want you to look at the comment. And it's like, it's so sad that like it's not funny because like I could see Trump literally doing that, or like someone like that, you know, making fun of a situation. I mean, not making fun of, but it being like not taken seriously because they have a political agenda they want to get done. So it was, I mean, it's definitely entertaining. I think that they did a really good job with the acting and just really good. It's really sad because it doesn't end well. Spoiler alert to anyone that hasn't seen it. I did. I mean, I kind of like that it didn't end well because that's the part where I think it could have been a little bit more serious. Is like our environment is out of control. Like our just. And it's like the greed and the politics involved with something as simple as like we should be able to protect the earth and like try to undo some of the damage that we've done, and we don't do it. We just keep on, and it's like and there was the whole theme of, well, that just sounds like a bummer. I don't want to listen to that. Or like, why do you have to be so serious? Like, that's depressing. I don't want to hear that. And that's kind of how Americans are. And pop culture is like, we don't want to hear the real message. It's black and white. Like, we're going to destroy the earth if we don't like wisen up and start taking care of it. But it's like, but we don't really want to hear that right now. Let's talk about, you know, something else. And
yeah, that's true. That's true. So, we don't want to. Oh, go ahead.
No, so I like that the world explodes at the end because like that's kind of what we deserve. Like it's almost like inevitable. And I love the whole you know, the Apple or, you know, Tim Cook or you know, that kind of like social media guy, scientist, whatever that the guy's playing, how the algorithms, he knows everyone's future and how he's like, oh, you're going to die alone. And it, you know, it makes fun of how, you know, our social media, like Facebook, Instagram, they have so much data on us.
Yeah, they do.
That they can predict our life. And the funny thing is like that, you know, he predicts the president's demise, and it's like kind of mysterious because it's like it doesn't make sense. But then at the end of the movie, it
does.
It's so hilarious, and it's so funny. I love that part. That was really funny. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I would recommend the movie because it does have sort of like a good message underneath, like the humor, you know, the political satire, messages about celebrity and celebrity culture. And
it also speaks about corporate greed, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. With Bash, and a little spoiler. So the government, finally, the Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence's characters finally persuade the U.S. government to send nukes to basically destroy or reroute where the comet's heading with some nukes. But then at the last second, the corporate entity of Bash comes in and stops it because they realize that they can make money off of this because it has all these rare minerals that the United States isn't privy to and that they have to go pay a large fortune to a different country to get. And it's all in there. So they're putting greed, once again, over human life and the earth, which is what's, you know, you can say that it's happening now. Corporate greed outweighs the climate change and stuff like that. So it's
been like that. That's it since the beginning of time.
True.
Like it's always been that. It's just that we're maybe more wise to it, but at the same time, it as much as people will pull the blinders from us or try to open our eyes to things, do we as like Americans want to even see it? Like that's, I think, part of the message too, is like,
do we want to know?
They're literally telling us in black and white, and it's like, no, like the pandemic's fake. Like they just want you to take a shot for whatever reason. And it's like, it's so infuriating because, you know, it's like there are certain things that are science that are like backed by evidence and facts that now it's our culture to just be like, no, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't believe in that. Like that's, you know, you're trying to spin it to control us or take away our guns or do, you know, control our children. And it's just insane. Like it honestly, it's crazy. And that's what it makes fun of. So I recommend the movie, like, especially, you know, it is funny. It does have its moments where it's really funny that I thought that we're really laughing, or I was
Yeah,
laughing, and it was
yeah.
kind of touching at the same time. Um, but it's yeah. So I mean, I recommend
I
it.
I recommend it as well. I mean, I like Jonah Hill's portrayal of a buffoon,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
how funny. One of the funny parts was when he tells Jennifer Lawrence character, "This FBI doesn't put bags over your head. That's the CIA, but I did that to you." He just wanted
yeah,
to let her know. That was
yeah.
funny.
Like how he hates her,
Yeah,
and I mean, you can imagine that that's what John Jr. did, like,
yeah,
or
yeah.
how he acted, and it's like a perfect portrayal of that family,
Hmm.
and it's just like he ends up getting abandoned by his mom, and like she
Yeah.
forgets about him, so
She's
it's like
coming back, right?
hilarious, yeah. But yeah, so that was one movie that I saw this weekend. The other one, me going to the movie theater to see, was The Matrix
Oh.
Resurrection, which I was really excited about. I definitely wanted to see it in the theater because my expectations were that um, they would live up to the hype of the first one, and bring some really cool visuals to the table. That's what I really liked about the first one.
Hmm.
I was a big fan of the first Matrix. I don't really remember a lot from the second or third, and
I
I
think
think
that's a
that
lot of people. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's why, to kind of segue into my feelings about the movie, is that I didn't really like the movie all that much, and it's because I was super confused by the plot, and I think that it's because I feel like the first one was going to be a standalone movie about Neo's journey, like
Hmm.
awakening, and then it became so popular that they're like, well, we have to do a second and a third
Right.
one, right? And then it became like this like jumbled, plot. And
Hmm.
then this one is like has a lot of like weird unnecessary things. So, I mean, we can kind of dissect it one by one, but initially going into the movie, like my expectations were really high. Wanted, really cool visuals, wanted to have some like philosophy, like theological kind of insight into,
Hmm.
sort of like the first Matrix, about awakening and seeing things for what they are, transformation, things like that. So that's how I came into the film. Like, what about you? Like, what were your expectations?
Well, love the first movie. I remember
Yeah.
watching it in the theater. I remember clearly my emotional feeling afterwards and feeling like, wow, I really want to know Kung Fu. I really want to, be emotionally invested with that character of
Yeah.
Neo and how I felt afterwards. And you just want to get out there and just go kick something, do some jumping and stuff like that. Cause it made you feel more than yourself.
Hmm.
So opposite than you though, I didn't go into this movie with high expectations
Okay.
because I felt like there was no way possible that it would be on par with that first one.
Hmm.
Or, and like you, I don't remember much. I remember watching the second and third, Reloaded, and um, I don't even
Something.
remember. Read something. There are three R's, right?
Yeah.
So, but I knew that I wanted to watch it just because I wanted to get that nostalgia back from the first one
Yeah.
of how it made me feel. But I didn't go in with high expectations because I knew I was probably going to be let down.
Yeah.
So maybe I was let down less than you were.
Hmm.
But let's talk about the cast first of all.
Yeah. Cast
So
is great.
cast was great. Keanu Reeves, Carrie Ann Moss, and Jada Pinkett Smith all
Returning.
reprising their roles
Hmm.
as Neo, Trinity, and Niobe.
Hmm.
And I thought that was great. It was cool. If you haven't seen it yet, this movie is set 60 years in the future from the end of part 3. So
Hmm.
just we see Jada Pinkett Smith's character a little bit aged, a little bit more wise, a little bit more savvy, a little bit more. She's had to live those 60 years. Whereas, if you don't, I won't spoil this part, but Neo and Trinity haven't aged as much.
Hmm.
So it was, there was also some newcomers into the series.
Yeah.
And
Well, let
I
me
think
let me just stop you
yeah.
real quick to stop you. So I think that like our talk is going to be for people that have seen the movie. So if they haven't, don't listen, because I
Stop
think
right
there's a
now.
lot that I want to talk that are like plot points
Okay.
that because that's our take, like what we thought about the movie. And I don't want to leave stuff out because I don't want to ruin the movie for people. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it and then come back to, whatever minute and second we are in the podcast. And then first, then second, what I want to do is just talk about Keanu Reeves, Carrie Moss, and Jada Pinkett Smith real quick, because they're reprising their roles, like you said. And so, first of all, Keanu Reeves is like a vampire. He doesn't age. I think he looks like very similar to the way he did in the first ones, like has more of like a longer hair, beard. So he looks a little, he looks more mature. Carrie Ann Moss they're in the Matrix again. So let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
They're back in the Matrix.
Fine, yeah. They got plugged back in.
They got plugged back in. And so they're back in the Matrix in, our world of reality. And so he's a video game developer.
Mm-hmm.
She's a housewife / motorcycle repairman. And then Niobe, or Jada Pinkett Smith, is in Io, is what it's called now. Yes. Like the new
human city outside of the Matrix. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my thoughts just initially of glad to see Keanu Reeves again, glad to see Carrie Ann Moss. Carrie Ann Moss looks amazing still too. Mm-hmm. She looks like she hasn't aged as well.
Right.
Now, Jada Pinkett Smith's character definitely looks like she aged, and because it's 6 years in the future. But the one thing that I do want to like kind of pick at, or like kind of annoyed me, is that there are certain times actors portray older people that, one, they put on the prosthetics so it physically makes them look old.
Yeah.
But then there's like a choice. Some actors don't choose to do this. Some choose to do this. And I think Jada Pinkett Smith and maybe Lana Wachowski decided that she was going to be like the old lady that like sounds like an old lady, which I didn't like. Like, I don't like when people portray older people like, oh, I'm an old lady. Like, it doesn't really need to be that old. Because, like, my parents are not young people. They're up in their age. And neither one of them sounds that way. Not that they're doing, like, cartwheels down the street because they are older, but they don't sound, like, weak, like they're about to, like, kill over at any moment. I that just annoys me when younger people think that older people, like, they forget that they like don't talk to like their grandparents or something, and they don't sound so old. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like a little.
I understand.
So anyway, I wanted to just put that out there because I just was like, they made her a little bit too feeble, in my opinion, especially since she is now the general of the humans in Io, and so like I would have thought that they could have made her a little bit. They did in her attitude. She had strength in what her perspective, like what she said. But I think there could have been more gravitas to what she was saying if she didn't put on the old lady voice. She already had the prosthetics, so she physically looked old. She didn't have to go so old, I felt. That's just my opinion, but carry on.
I understand what you're saying there. It didn't bother me as much because I don't know. I mean, I see what you mean, but it really didn't bother me. I guess I just kind of just bought into the whole, she's a older lady now, and it's just.
It's a Gabriel thing, that the little things that bother me about movies or things in life that no one else cares about. And the reason why, and this is a little side note, is because I'm still pissed off about Sex and the City and how they're portraying those characters, and they're like 50 and they're portraying them like they're 108. Like, it's crazy. And so like, maybe it's because like I'm in my 40s and I'm super far from, being deaf at 50, or like needing a hip replacement at 50. That's what the characters are doing, by the way, in Sex and the City. Okay. So like, it's a little offensive to me. Like, old people, like people in general, when they hit 50, they don't like start acting like old people, especially our parents' generation. I think they've changed the way that old people act. Definitely a lot different from like 2 generations before, because medicine and health has improved so much that older people are like living longer and they're healthier. They're like out doing stuff. They're not just sitting home like reading the newspaper and watching like their stories on television. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what you mean.
That's just like, that's my I'm a little over like the ageism in media right now and
Well,
making old people like so old.
I guess the question is, how old is she supposed to be?
Well, like I'm assuming that she wasn't 20 in the first, whenever her first appearance, right? And it's 60 years later. So she's like 80.
Okay.
My dad's like 80. He's like, I think he's like 78, 79. He does not talk like that. He goes to the gym 5 days a week. He bench presses more than I can bench press. Like people think that he looks like 50. And my mom's like 7 years younger than my dad is. And she doesn't talk like that. She sounds like she did when she was, 40. And it's like, it's just weird like that. It's
Well,
like
I
they
guess,
hit you over the head with their age. And it's like, we
living
get
in
it. She's
Iowa is
older.
hard, Gabe. Living in Iowa is hard. It's a rough
Eating all that
life.
sludge or whatever they ate in the previous Matrix.
They're barely developing strawberries. Come on.
I know. Yeah. That was the
She's
big
lived a hard life.
Yeah. So anyway, I got off on a tangent. That was just my first reactions to seeing the cast that returned.
Mm-hmm.
So since we're talking about who reprises their roles, so surprisingly, Morpheus is in it, but he's not played by Lawrence Fishburne, and Agent Smith is in it, but he's not played by the actor that originated the role. And so this is what like my problem with it. First of all, Lawrence Fishburne said he was surprised by not being in it because no one asked him. So he wasn't even asked to be in it, which is kind of like, okay, so they wanted someone to be him, but to look different. And the whole thing was that Neo coded him into the Matrix because he's meaningful to Neo. And he knew that like it would help him because he's like a father figure, super important. So if that's so, why would he make him look different? And why not it be like that would be the touchstone, right? Like even because at one point in the film, Morpheus is in the Matrix. He doesn't really know who he is. He has to eat the pill and get woken up or do all of that stuff. So I don't get it. That's one of the things that like I'm like, okay, like I don't understand why it had to be a different actor. Like, was it really because then he really doesn't play like that. He's not important, Morpheus, in this movie, right? Like he kind of like comes in and out.
The main, he's not.
So why even bring him in?
Well, like you said, Neo coded him as a guide. Now, this gets a little bit to the plot points. Beginning of the movie, first 20 minutes, I didn't know what the hell was going on. It was like, okay, it's a modal, which if you weren't familiar with what a modal is, I'm glad they explain it later on in the film. Because at first
I didn't get that explanation.
I still didn't hear that? Yeah.
No.
Okay. So basically it's like a loop. Like he created a loop, right? Okay. So he can replay that scene over and over again and watch it and get every angle of it. And the hackers found that piece of code, piece of software, and that's how they were able to extract Morpheus. So it wasn't really Morpheus as we know him. It was another interpretation from Thomas Anderson's mind, who is the alter ego of Neo, so to speak. And he created that for himself. Yes, that's exactly the look I had on my face when I was watching it. I was like, what the heck is going on? I don't understand this. I pushed pause, thought about it for a moment because I saw it at home. I was like, what's going on here? Then I said, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to let the story explain itself to me.
Well, and here's like some insight to like our listeners. I'm completely ignorant to anything technology-wise. Like, I fully admit that I'm an idiot. Like, I don't know technology. Like, I will hit Control Delete to try to solve any issue that I have with anything.
Nice.
But you, Danny, are more educated within and experienced with technology and with computers and all of that stuff. So I would expect you to at least be able to get it. And if it's above your head, maybe it was a little too much that they went into, right?
I agree completely. It was a bit much. It was.
If it's going over your head and you're like the tech nerd, then maybe it was a little too much. But
I completely agree. But I will say this with the caveat that it did explain itself throughout the movie.
I think I was eating popcorn or something because I had missed that explanation.
Well, go back and watch it on HBO Max. And they do explain it, which is great because, like you said, it was just, I don't know what Lana was thinking, but it went over my head a little bit. It was like, wow.
So then the other character that they bring back is Agent Smith, different actor.
Jonathan
And
Groff.
according, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and I think that it was because of scheduling. So they actually possibly did ask the original
Oh, did
actor,
they?
but
Okay.
he couldn't be in
Okay.
it because of a scheduling conflict. I don't know what he's making that's so important, but um, maybe he made the right decision though, because this was not that great. So they bring Agent Smith back in. Looks different. I don't get why he's there. Like, to be
Well,
honest.
okay. So if you remember from the original trilogy, Neo basically when he went through them, he set Agent Smith free, so he was no longer a virus or tethered to the Matrix, right? So now he could go like any other sentient program, go in and out of different scenes. He wasn't tied. He wasn't an agent anymore, right? So in the
So he's artificial intelligence.
right,
So
he
is he like one of those little fish flying around in the Matrix, like in the real world? Like, where
no,
is
he's
he?
still a program within the Matrix, but he's not tethered to the Matrix. He's like a virus in a way, I guess.
Okay,
But
so
the new character is so Thomas Anderson or Neo is his boss, right? His partner
yeah,
at the software development company that they both
hmm
work for created, where they created the Matrix video games, which
hmm
is a tongue-in-cheek joke to the Matrix trilogy and how they wanted a fourth version of the video game and why they didn't really need it, which I guess was a tie back to Warner Brothers asking for a fourth Matrix movie, but the Wachowskis didn't want to give them one, or they didn't want to do it their way. So it was like a whole reference to that.
yeah, which I
But
liked. I liked that
yeah, that
whole
was
part.
cool. But did he need to be there?
No, and it's so random how he comes in at the beginning trying to kill Neo, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he's still Tom Anderson or whatever the fuck, and then he is in the middle, and then he sort of wants to help him, and then he just disappears. Right? Like, I mean, that's the
It was
impression I got.
an alliance of convenience, wasn't it?
But then he just like disappears. So why did he want to kill him in the beginning if he would somewhat know that he needs to team up with him, right?
I don't know if he knew that he needed to
Why?
team up with
How
him.
would he not know? Where did he gain the knowledge? Some way midpoint of the movie, because he just disappeared and then he comes back, knowing that he needs to
Right,
help him.
right, true.
So, and the
Good
other thing
point.
that annoyed me is that like it's the same Agent Smith, and why didn't he call him Mr. Anderson? Why did he start calling him Tom?
Or Thomas, or no, yeah, Tom.
That
Because it
wasn't like,
wasn't the same agent, I think. I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to
wasn't
rewatch
it?
it to let you know.
I
It
mean,
was well. If you
because
think about
it's the
it, the
new
character
Matrix,
who
right?
became as Morpheus, he was also Agent Smith at the very beginning. If you
Yeah,
realize
he
that
was an agent.
he was Agent Smith, he said the same lines. No, no, Commander, they're already dead. That the same Agent Smith said before.
Yeah,
So that was also weird to me. So
yeah.
who was the real Agent Smith? I don't know. It's
That is not. I don't get it. I think it was unnecessary to bring Morpheus and Agent Smith in. Like, I think they could have just left that to the past. Those are like two really good things that they did in the first one. Like Smith and Morpheus were awesome. Like, I loved their
yeah,
interactions. It wasn't needed in this one because pretty much this movie is about a love story, right,
yeah,
between Trinity and Neo. Smith and that whole fight scene with Kent, like it's just there because they needed a fight scene, I think.
yeah,
And
could be.
then so there's another character so we'll talk about characters they introduced. The main villain is um
The analyst.
Mr. Anderson or Tom Anderson, whatever, his counselor in the Matrix, who is really the analyst or the new creator of this new
Yeah.
version of the Matrix, played by Neil Patrick Harris, who I thought did a good job acting
Oh, he
wise.
was
Like,
fantastic. I liked
he's
him a lot.
a really
Yeah.
good actor. I like him. He wasn't like super over the top, which I think some people are saying that he was a little too over the top, but I'm like, I don't think so. I disagree with that. I thought he
I
was
thought he was
good.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I liked him. Some of the other new characters are like, I guess, the new band of generals and like the new fighters, freedom fighters, if you will. The first one being Jessica Henwick, who plays Bugs, who's like
Yeah.
really like central to the plot because she helps free
She's
Neo.
going to
And
freeze him. Yeah.
yeah, and so she's really cool. I like her. She's, I think, a Chinese Canadian or Chinese American actress. I love her like blue hair, like her style. That's something that they brought back from the first one that I really like is the way that it's like really ugly and plain in, I guess, the Awake version or like in Zion or EO or whatever it's called.
Hmm.
And then, but in the Matrix, they're like sexy and beautiful and badass. I like that. Like, it's really cool. Like, I like the transformation that she has, or like her look in the movie or in the Matrix. Like, I think she looks really cool. She's really badass. There's some really cool special effects where she's like, the rooms sort of like flip and move as she's going in and out of
Yeah.
like portals because
The
they don't use the
doors and the
phone
portals.
anymore.
Yeah.
They use doors or windows or mirrors.
Mirrors. Yeah.
And so I thought she was really cool. One of my favorite cameos that I wasn't expecting in the movie was Christina Ricci, who
Uh-huh.
plays sort of like a marketing director, and
Hmm.
and that's kind of like in reference to what we were talking about is like where they sort of it's like self-referential where they're talking about how Warner Brothers was demanding some new product and they didn't want to do it. So it's like, was that the Wachowski like sisters or just Lana's way of sort of addressing how maybe they didn't want to
Yeah.
make a new one and what I really liked is they discussed like what made the Matrix important and then all the different characters sort of saying like, oh, it was bullet time, that was what really brought it in,
Hmm.
or no, it was the love story between Neo and Trinity, and it was the way it looked, and they're talking about all the things that you love as an audience member.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was kind of really interesting to
Yeah,
hear
that was. Yeah.
the Matrix characters
Yeah.
talking about like what we would be talking about.
Hmm.
So I thought that was really cool, and like the way they filmed it was really interesting. It was probably like one of the highlights of the film for me is that dialogue that they had
Yeah.
about what made the movie so special. I mean, they're talking about the video games, but really the movie, and I thought that was really cool. What other new characters were introduced that were kind of cool?
Well, I think the character of Lexi, played by
Mhm.
Indira Ibarra,
Mhm.
she was really fantastic in it. Every scene she was in, she stole the show. I think
Yeah.
she was just great. I
So
really liked.
did this is my, I don't want to know if this is like my perception of it, but was she Bug's girlfriend? Because I feel like there was a scene where they're like embracing in a romantic way, not just in a friendship, we almost died way, like more of a like we almost died, but I love you way.
I don't know. I don't
Do
recall
you
that.
remember that scene though? Like it
I
sort of
think
pans
so.
them and it's after like Bugs is like comes back into I guess their real world and they're like embracing. I think that they might be a couple. I don't know. I'll have to do research on that and see if that's just me reading into it. But I was like kind of coming into the film like there better be some Latinos. I kind of go like every time I see a science fiction like action film, I'm like looking like there has to be. And then so when I finally saw Lexi, I was like, thank God they included us in this film because I would have been pissed. I would have been tweeting, Lana Wachowski right now. She had a really cool, like I loved her like little like baby hairs that they had combed down
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
the braid, like her
She had the
hair was
cool
really
like
cool.
1920s like flapper girl, that type of vibe to me. I thought it was
Yeah,
really
like
cool.
finger waves mixed with like
Exactly.
pins in her hair, and the really cool glasses that they were wearing. Style wise, they I think they knocked it out of the park again. They had like it harkened back to the first one where they had that really cool Matrix style.
Hmm.
They didn't really do anything when it came to like reintroducing like a new filmmaking style, like with that bullet time they did in the first one. They did like a slow motion kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
thing, but it wasn't really that impactful as it was in the first film when they did, him falling backwards and being able to dodge
Hmm.
bullets. Um, so there was a monologue that the evil guy has where he says, he used Keanu Reeves creating bullet time. That I was like, wait, did Keanu Reeves or Neo introduce that? Because I could have sworn that the agents also were in bullet time, and it was just indicating that he could be as fast as the agents because like the agents punch super fast when they're
Yeah.
like punching him and they could dodge bullets. So I thought that was kind of like not true in a way. Like again, I picked up on something that probably no one else would care or notice.
Well,
But like I don't think Neo invented that or that wasn't part of his like I mean, it was part of his special powers because like he was able to do that, but really it was just him acting like the agents. So then
Right.
why would the creator or the whatever he is now, why would he think that that's like a new thing if his agents could already do that? Did you get me?
I understand what you're saying. I think when I think bullet time, I think of more of as the special effects as more of a more opposed to the power that he has. Because
Right.
Neo, his power was that when Morpheus tells him, when you realize your power, you won't have to dodge bullets because you can just
Mhm.
stop them. And I think that
Yeah.
was his power, right?
Well, but what's the Neil Patrick character? I keep forgetting his character's name. The creator or
The analyst,
the
I think is what they
analyst.
call him.
So
Yeah,
the analyst, but he mentions, doesn't he say like
he
actually
talks about
say
bullet
bullet
time. Yeah,
time? So
and he
like
talks
that's
about
what's
feelings and
yeah,
how
that's
it's
what's weird for
controlled
me is
there.
that
Yeah.
like he like mentions bullet time as like that's part of Neo's power. And then he's like, thanks for creating bullet time. Like because of that, I was able to do this slow-mo feature that like I can stop you and make
Right,
you
right. Yeah,
be like
I know
so
what you're
like
saying.
it kind of it's not really true. Like it's not really a thing. Anyway, that was their attempt at like trying to do a new bullet time, but in this movie, like their
Hmm.
slow-mo thing, which I didn't think was as cool.
Right. I mean, I think it was cool because if you're the one in slow motion, so he's playing on that feelings of being, unable to get to save the person you love because
Mhm.
you're moving so slow that you can't get there in time. So I mean, it's not really an action thing, it's more of an emotional thing, and I think that's what he was talking about as well. It's
Yeah.
more of a playing using the feelings and that's one of the key things with this new version of the Matrix
Mhm.
that Neil Patrick Harris, the analyst, created is that yes, people, and this might even be like harken back to like we talked about Don't Look Up. They might know they're in the Matrix, but they don't might not want to get out of there because
Yeah,
they're
I was going
connected
to
to
ask
it.
you that. So is it pretty much a metaphor for like how Mark Zuckerberg is evil or wait, is that his name? The guy that Facebook?
Facebook, yeah.
Like basically that we know Facebook is evil and they're analyzing and using our feelings and emotions to manipulate
Hmm.
us, but we're okay with it because we
Yeah,
like living in this like bliss of, you know, puppy dog videos and fights and arguments and Trump
it's
and it like
absolutely true.
right?
It is. It's like we want to be connected to each other in a way, and so we give up those. You know, I don't want to say privacy, but we give up certain aspects in order to
Mhm.
stay connected. And even when we're told they're doing this for malicious things, they're doing this
Mhm.
to evil, we say okay, and we look the other way and keep going.
Yeah.
And so it's also a metaphor for do we don't want to be saved.
Yeah.
Even if someone comes and tells us, I can set you free. You don't have to be this way anymore. No, we're fine.
Nah.
We're good. Thanks, anyways.
I really like Instagram, so no. Uh,
Exactly. It's like I just bought my Oculus Quest 2. I need to be plugged in now. Come on.
yeah, yeah. So the another thing that annoyed me on my list of things that annoy me about this movie, and then I'll mention something positive. So there's a scene where they are in the Matrix and they're like they're it's like the very beginning of them trying to save Trinity, and um, I think it's Agent Smith brings in like the exiles, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like the freaking Pirates of Penzance. Like I was like, what the fuck are these people?
It's a pen.
It was like Genghis Khan and like what? Like who were they? Like I don't remember them in
I don't
one, two,
remember them either.
three. Like what was that?
I was asking the same question as you. I maybe if we went back and watched part 2 and 3, it'd explain it more because I think they did reference to that, like the people who were exiled from the Matrix for whatever reason, the programs that were exiled.
Yeah,
But yeah, I was like, why are
it
there
was
like all
odd.
like cowboys like looking people in here? Why are there?
Yeah,
It's like
it was like old timey like samurai like
yeah,
Genghis Khan looking people, and then
I
the
didn't
random
get it
French
either.
guy. And I think the French guy was in too, right? Wasn't he the guy that's like married to Monica Bellucci's character, like with the two
I
evil
I
twin
have to
go?
go
I don't
watch
know.
him back.
I kind of remember him, so I'm like, okay, but then he was dressed as a pirate, right? Like,
Yeah,
didn't
it was
so
yeah,
like
it was
it was
weird.
it was it was super weird. I was like, what the hell is this? Okay, so good thing, positive thing is that they had Priyanka Chopra in it, who I think is like gorgeous. I think she's
Mm-hmm.
like illuminates the
Yeah.
screen. She's just super beautiful. I didn't get what character she played. What the hell? I didn't know she was a program, a robot. Uh,
So they did a
I
flashback callback to a younger girl who was actually, I guess, this character all grown up. I guess she was like another one of the sentient beings within the Matrix. So she's like a living AI. That so okay. So at the end of part 3, when Neo sacrifices himself, him and Trinity
mhm,
allegedly die.
yeah,
Some of the machines see that sacrifice and are like, wow, maybe the humans aren't as bad as we thought. So that's why they create Io and they try to live in harmony with one another.
yeah,
Um, her characters, I think Santi or Sati or whatever,
mhm,
her quote unquote father or creator was one of those machines that saw the light, so to
mhm,
speak. And I think she grew up living with humans,
yeah.
so she wants to help them. Yeah, it's weird. It's strange.
I that was one of the things that I was like, I was glad to see her where they're
Yeah.
like at the well and she looks beautiful and she's
Mhm.
like talking about whatever. But I'm like, I'm just gonna admire her beauty because I have no idea what she's talking about. And
I think.
then yeah, so
Go
they're
ahead.
talking about the plan of like
Hmm.
freeing Trinity. She doesn't have to take a pill, but she has to make the choice. Okay, whatever. I don't get it. Then she's like, when we unplug Trinity, we have to plug in Bugs because you're the only one that's close to her. What? Why? Why is Bugs the
He's like a
closest to
temporary
Trinity?
holding. I didn't.
Right? And so they unplug her from the Matrix, right? And then they
Right.
plug in Bugs, and then they immediately unplug Bugs.
Right.
And then they plug Trinity back into the Matrix.
Right. So she was like a. Think of Bugs, I guess, as like a temporary holding, like a flash drive for Trinity's consciousness, I guess.
Is that what it was?
That's what I think it was. They used Bugs as like a flash drive or a temporary portable hard drive, so to
I
speak,
it
until
was
they got
literally like
Trinity's being out of the battery pod into the ship, right?
and then they plugged
And
her
then
back in the
they
Matrix.
uploaded it back into her. Yeah,
Why? Why
to
did they plug her
transfer
back into the Matrix?
to tr- to
Because she's
transfer her,
free, right? Like, because
right?
it's
Well,
like
she's out of the Matrix now, and
when they
she's
freed Neo, he wakes
mhm.
up and he's in Zion and they talk and they like explain what's going on. They don't immediately plug him back in. And
No.
so when they free Trinity, they don't explain to her like what's going on. You have to go back in and save Neo. You have to, it's just like burn, they plug her back in and then
I
she's
think
talking to him.
I think that was all explained prior to her making her choice to leave, wasn't it? When they were doing the fight with the analysts and everything, and before they plugged her out or disconnected her from the battery pod, that's what I'm going to call it, I guess.
Yeah.
It was all explained to her, so she made that choice to leave it, to leave her quote unquote family, because she realized she hates the name Tiffany. And that's the Martha moment, is it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a movie that I think needs to be viewed more than once, because each time you watch it,
Yeah.
if you could sit through it more than once, you'll understand it a little bit more. I
But
know
like,
I'm planning on watching it again just so I can kind of um, get all the little bits, because I'm sure there is more to it. I know if we trust in Lana Wachowski for the first 3 movies, and we believe in her direction and viewpoint,
mhm.
then we just have to trust that she kind of knows what she's talking about with it when it comes to the Matrix world and realm. That we just have to buy into it and just
No,
put
yeah, I
all
think that it
normal
makes
thoughts.
sense to her.
Yeah.
Like to Lana, it was like slam, grand slam or whatever
Hmm.
reference to sports that is. But for me, as someone who doesn't understand, like I'm not a tech goth nerd or whatever she is, like because I think that's like her whole deal,
Hmm.
right? She's like
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
tech goth or whatever. Um, I don't have like there isn't enough in the movie that motivates me to want to go back to understand it more because there wasn't enough like guts or feeling to like motivate me to want to understand. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like if and because I feel like they really underutilized Carrie Ann Moss. Like,
yeah, definitely.
There's like I feel like when she escaped, like when they're fleeing from like the mob, or like I forget what they call it, like kill mode or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, like I like,
Yeah.
he's like dodging bullets and like dodging shit or whatever. I feel like it could have been a little bit cooler for her to have been in the lead and her rescuing him. She does at the end of the movie, like she flies and she saves him. But I wanted to see more of her kicking ass, because that's one of the things that I loved in the first one, is she was such a badass.
Yeah.
And she didn't really, she had like a little tiny little bit of a moment where she's like comes back and kicks ass, and it's sort of like, oh, it's like kind of badass, but it's like, it's such a small moment. I wanted more. I wanted to see more of that for her and for that character. There was something else that I wanted to bring up that I forgot about that, but oh well, it'll come.
Talk about Deja Vu, the cat.
I know, right? The little cat.
I thought it was really cool. Well, two standouts for me were Neil Patrick Harris. I really thought he nailed it as the villain, and that he took like the menacing overlord that we saw with like Agent Smith in the first one, and just brought it into a nuanced mode, because he wasn't fighting, he wasn't all action, it was more of the cerebral type, right? So it was really cool. I really appreciated his acting in it. I really enjoyed that. I like that the Matrix itself didn't have, when they're in the Matrix, didn't have that green hue. It was more colored, what we're used to appropriately, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was good. I mean, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
It was, for me, as a fan of the first one, like I said, and coming in, like I said, with low expectations, it met those low expectations. So it earned a rewatch for me at some point. So I'll say that.
I remember what I was trying to say. So overall, I would give the film like a C, I guess, if it would be a grade. Like it was good.
Okay.
It was okay.
Okay.
It wasn't great. There's
fair.
there's little things that like I'm not going to run to go like rewatch it the same way I didn't run to go watch the second or third Matrix. I watched the first one like a bajillion times, like over and over and over again. So one of the things that occurred to me is that like, now that we know the impact of the first Matrix films, like there's people that like legit think that the Matrix is real.
Yeah, that's true.
And we know that it, I mean, I don't want to give credence to like conservatives that say that like movies are responsible for people doing bad things, but like we do know that the Matrix sort of, it didn't help matters when it came to like violence with young people that like are prone to those things with like the trench coat mafia and Columbine and all of those things. Don't think the Matrix is at all responsible, but like one thing that I was like kind of, it just kind of struck me when I was watching it is that there was a couple instances in the film where like Neo and Trinity, in order for them to like wake up or like realize their power, they had to jump off a building and like almost commit suicide. Like the first, I think he did commit suicide right at one point because he fell off the building and died. And that's what triggered Bugs seeing him in his real form, like falling off the building.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird that like maybe as a choice, knowing that the influence and the scope, the magnitude of the weirdos in the world, that there are people that really think the Matrix is real. There are people that are like super influenced by the film, like not her problem, not Lana. I'm not putting the responsibility on Lana Wachowski's lap. Like she's a filmmaker. She shouldn't have to worry about that. That's our problem as an audience or society to like mental health and all that stuff. But knowing what she knows, it is kind of, I think, an interesting choice that she would have. You know, we have people that say like take the red pill when they talk about like waking up in a political sense. And those are the same kind of people that believe in like QAnon and all these crazy like Pizzagate and all this stuff. So they could possibly watch this movie, and if they're already disturbed, think that in order to wake it up, like walk off a building.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't want to put that out in
thing, right?
Yeah, I don't want to put that into existence. But it did occur to me that it was kind of like an odd choice. That like that's how Neo has to wake up. Like he couldn't stand on the building and try to fly like up. He has to jump off to see if he floats or flies. Like, it's just weird. I don't know. It's, again, one of my Gabe things that I notice, but there's just certain things when I think that there are people that are creators that once they see the impact and they still choose to do things anyway, like I'm sure she's had discussions with people over the responsibility or the role that the Matrix has played in society with like the hyper, violence and all of that stuff. She knows that that might be something that people criticize, right? Or that something people might look at. So why make that choice? Why make that choice that in multiple instances in the movies, our character is going to jump off a building in order to wake it up?
Yes, I mean, I think she counters that nicely with the whole him going to therapy and him talking them basically saying that it wasn't real, it didn't happen.
One could argue, though, that they vilify the
Therapy.
Counselor and therapy and
Okay.
medication to help people that have mental health issues.
Okay, that's true.
And that's another thing that's kind of interesting that it's like people, and it's not all of us because it's only a certain segment of people that maybe have mental health issues that might be influenced by these movies. But in their world, that she knows exists. Like you could go online right now and Google people that think that the Matrix is real. They're going to think, if I go see my counselor, they're going to try to medicate me, which is
keep
bad.
Me in the Matrix, yeah.
Keep me in the Matrix, keep me, confused, and I need to wake up. And also I might need to jump off a building to make sure that I can fly. Like it's a little weird. It's a little, like I said, it's movies. It's not her responsibility, but I'm sure that she's had conversations with multiple people about the responsibility or the role that the Matrix played during that time. She could have done. She could say, "You know what? Fuck it. I don't. That has nothing to do with me." Which maybe that's what the response is by this.
She's taking,
yeah, which is probably what she's taking. I'm just kind of curious, like how people. It's sort of like we've talked about that before. It's like, why did Chris Pratt, why does he post stuff on Instagram when he knows people are already watching him really closely? Why not just not do it? So why not put in a controversial thing unless that's part of your MO is that you want to have controversy so people will see the movie or there's something to talk about. And I'm not saying that I'm not the same way with my art. I do have things that are kind of could be pursued or perceived as controversial, and I do it anyway. But I don't there's no one that looks at my photography and is
jump off a building now.
is influencing to do something that they shouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying? If that were the case, if that was presented to me and someone said your art is influencing people, I don't know how I would react in that situation because I've not been in it, but it's something to think about, right? It's kind of interesting.
That's true. That's true. And I guess that's a question we can ask our viewers. Do you think the Matrix is influential in that regard? Does Lana Wachowski play a role, or should it be incumbent upon her to rein in her storytelling to placate the potential one or two people who might be motivated to do something that they shouldn't because of the story she tells?
And one of the things that, so I'm really going to get into it, but one of the things that's interesting is that I would assume, based off her being a trans woman, that she would be a fan of therapy and of mental health and mental well-being, because that's part of the process. I think that, not that I know a lot, but from what I heard is that, a lot of people go through therapy to better understand themselves and their identity and their gender expression and being able to choose, be able to understand that, because, it can be confusing for some people, and therapy helps. It's interesting. And I think that it could be just that it made sense for the plot, but it's interesting that, therapy is sort of vilified in this movie, sort of the same way that maybe Get Out vilified therapy and counselors, and one could even argue about that movie too. And maybe this is a topic for another thing, is that African-American community is sort of not the biggest support of mental health. Like they're a little bit wary of it. You know, mental health within communities, especially within people of color, is like seen as a weakness. You don't go see a therapist, you just deal with it like as a man, whatever.
Yeah.
So like when you see filmmakers that are like a Black filmmaker sort of have a therapist in it and it's evil and it's like you're going to be conned, you're going to be manipulated. And then you see this where it's like, again, another therapist that's like manipulating you, keeping you stifled. Like, I don't know. I question, like, is that something like maybe we shouldn't be pushing because we still have a lot to go when it comes to mental health and people accepting it and people allowing mental health to be like a positive thing and going to see a therapist is a positive thing. So like maybe, and I'm not one of those kind of woke people that's like, oh, don't watch The Matrix because it stigmatizes mental health care and all of that. Like, I am not that, but it's something that like maybe we could talk about is like do films like further that stigma when it comes to mental health care and show it as like an evil thing when it should be like I can think of a couple movies where like the villains are like therapists or like use therapy or psychologists and it's like do we like let's not keep using that stereotype or that
right. I think
gimmick.
for I personally never believed in like therapy and stuff like that. But it wasn't because I saw them as villains.
Yeah.
It was more like you said, it was seen as a weakness. Right. So at least in this regard, he's not shown to be weak for going to a therapist. Yes, the therapist or counselor may come across or may be evil intent and villain, but the character going to therapy isn't seen as being weak, which I guess is a positive because I've always seen it. Like I said, growing up, I see therapy and I see, oh, why you got to go talk to someone? Can't you just deal with that yourself? Aren't you strong enough to deal with that? So seeing characters put themselves in vulnerable positions where they go to therapists to express themselves and learn to be more in tune with themselves is a good thing, whether or not the therapist is good or evil.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. Yeah.
I would be interested to maybe see if like there's a mental health care advocate that would be willing to talk to us in regards to the way mental health is portrayed in pop culture. So like if
That'd be
anyone's
good,
listening that is involved in that scene, you know, contact us, DM us, because I think I'm interested in that. Like
that's very true.
I feel like there is a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health care and the way it's portrayed in pop culture. And I would like to see it change. And I'm not blaming any artists. Like I think that part of the Matrix with like the pills is that it's just a really cool like visual, right?
Well, I think it's the whole aspect, and it's the part that plays a big role in the first trilogy is that it's a choice. You're given a choice, right?
Right. So and it's a cool because movie making is visual. Right. It's a cool visual to have a blue and a red
to make your choice.
You know, and it could have been done in other ways. So it's like I don't think that they were specifically vilifying medication or therapy or anything like that. But it is something that just occurred to me that like, for those people that maybe need mental health care that are fans of Matrix, that think the Matrix is real, that they're, conspiracy theorists, that those people might actually benefit from going to a therapist or like someone who could help analyze them and help them with their thoughts. And this might further lead them astray because in their world.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I just think that it's funny because the people who might need it the most, who are fans of this type of movie, will go see it and it will,
further ingrain what they already think. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic idea. Let's reach out to some mental health professionals who would be willing to speak to us about mental health and in pop culture. Yeah. Because it's a conversation that needs to be had. I agree.
Yeah. Cool. So I mean, that was my feelings about The Matrix in a nutshell.
A rather enlarged nutshell, but yeah.
No, a bushel of nuts.
I agree with you on your rating of a C.
Yeah.
So The Matrix is a must see.
Yeah.
movie, but it's
Your dad jokes are just amazing.
They are. I'm always on top. And I was just thinking of those today. I was like, you know what? Because I don't remember who I was talking to, but I said some joke about it. And I was like, wow, I got to stop myself.
I say embrace it. Just embrace it.
Okay.
Why fight the inevitable? I mean, it is what it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
start getting gray hairs. Just embrace the gray hair.
There you go.
Yeah. Dad jokes. Just keep sprouting.
Keep sprouting. Keep plucking them out. Yeah. Dad jokes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in to our initial episode of 2022. We look forward to bringing you a whole slew of exciting, captivating, wonderful, insert adjective here shows. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that notification button so you always know when we come out with our new shows. And we will see you next week or 2 weeks or when we see you next.
Yeah, I think there will be a delay because plot twist, I'm going on vacation. So so we may not be here next week. Actually, we won't be here next week. So stay tuned. We'll still be on social media, so you'll still see us tweeting, twatting, whatever, sending out messages. But we won't be in an actual podcast for next week. We'll be back the week thereafter. So stay safe, everyone. Wear your mask. Wash your hands.
Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. Get that booster shot if you haven't already. So with that, we'll see you.